So how's it going, guys? So we've talked about a lot of Sonic games here on this channel, but we have yet to touch on any of the handhelds. So I figured what a better way than to kick that off by talking about Sonic Advance. So I had a hankering for going back to this game after a while. It's been many a year. I seriously don't think I've actually touched this game since perhaps maybe 2003. Yeah, it's been a long time. And Sonic Advance, what do I really remember of this game going back and playing it? Well, one thing's for sure, I was super excited about it. I had been playing Sonic games on PC, such as the Sonic and Knuckles collection up to this point, because I remember I was having a little bit of remorse about selling my Sega Genesis years before. And I wanted to get back into Sonic. I kind of started reading the comic book again, the Archie comic, after not reading it for a few years. And I was getting back into Sonic, and then the big announcement hit that Sonic Adventure 2 was coming out, and almost at the same time, the Dreamcast was going up in smoke. And I was like, oh shit, what's the future going to be for Sonic? Well, sure enough, he was headed over to Nintendo's hardware, and I happened to own the Game Boy Advance at the time, and I figured, of course, I'm going to pick up Sonic's first ever adventure on the Nintendo hardware. And I think, it can't really be underestimated at how big of an announcement this was, how historic it was. For the first time ever, Sonic was going to appear on the same console that was his competitors. This was huge. This was massive. I mean, no amount of words and adjectives could really put this into its justifiable glory. And, if you want to really call it that, if you're a hardcore Sega fan, this was also sort of bittersweet in a way, because it was one way of kind of Sega bowing their head to Nintendo in defeat, as Sonic would be pretty much holding hands with Mario on a Nintendo console. So, with that being said, how did Sonic's first ever adventure on Nintendo's hardware play out? Well, I have to say, going back to it, I have to say pretty damn good. I actually really enjoyed this most recent playthrough that I did for the purpose of this retrospective. So this is actually Sonic's first 2D side-scroller, I figured, in about 5 years, because the last one was Sonic Blast on Game Gear, which was a critically panned game, and pretty much the same thing from majority of fans back in late 1996. So this game being released in very early 2002, it was a nice 5-year gap, and we were definitely ready for a new 2D Sonic game. And it was definitely weird going back to seeing this style after it being absent for quite a few years. We had seen pretty much the pinnacle of graphical fidelity when it came to Sonic and 3D platformers when we saw Sonic Adventure, and then Sonic Adventure 2 even more so. But if you take a look at the artwork on the box of the game, you will see that Sonic is in his adventure design, which was pretty expected. And I remember, being a bit torn about this. Back then in the early 2000s, I was not very crazy about the redesign of Sonic. You have to remember, I grew up with this series. I played it for the first time when I was 5 years old. This was quite the traumatic experience for me, seeing a character that I played for the first time in Sonic 2 on my Genesis, and then reading through countless of pages of Archie comics with Sonic's design being that of what we know now as classic Sonic. It was very startling to see this long-limbed green eye abomination at the time. Okay, maybe I didn't think it was that bad, but I was pretty unhappy. I remember for a long time, playing this game and reading the later issues when I got back into the comic. I really did have a big problem with green-eyed Sonic. I don't know what it was. I can't even really begin to tell you, because I have a whole different perspective on how he looks. And now I don't even really see the adventure design as being so much less than the classic. I mean, I'd still probably go with the classic design over anything, but yeah, the adventure design, I actually really like it. I don't know what it was, but I think it had something to do with the nostalgia, and I still am blinded by nostalgia, I know, but this was definitely one time when I was seriously blinded by it and I couldn't get over it. So you turn on this game and you get a badass intro and you see Eggman, yes, no longer Dr. Robotnik, but Dr. Eggman, holding a Chaos Emerald. And this intro is just phenomenal, and it shows what the Game Boy Advance hardware could do. And then we see all the other characters that are all playable now. Tails, Amy, Knuckles as well. Amy making her playable debut in a side-scrolling Sonic game. And we see that they all have their adventure designs. And, this definitely wouldn't surprise you seeing that Sonic has his. So, let's talk about when we start up the game. The graphics look pretty damn good. They do. At the time, I was not used to seeing anything like this on the handheld. Of course, I had the original Game Boy Advance. The SP was not out, and this thing was dark as a motherfucker. It goes without saying. I had to get a worm light from Nyko. And, then things kind of really seemed to brighten up a bit, if you'll excuse the pun. But one thing that really bothered me about this handheld was a few things, really. First of all, this is heralded as 32-bit. And you kind of think at the time, what else was 32-bit? The PlayStation. Now, you look at this and it doesn't even look as good as the Sega Genesis Classics. It looks like sort of on par with it, but the graphics are still pretty pixelated. I mean, you're looking at Sonic, you're looking at Tails, and and so on, and they don't look clear. The environments do look pretty good though. They look quite awesome. They're definitely not as highly detailed as that of the 16-bit Genesis games, but they look pretty good, and I can't really complain that much. But these characters are pretty pixelated. And what I have to say, was this handheld really 32-bit? Because I always questioned that. I was like, well, if it's 32-bit, why doesn't it look like the PlayStation? I mean, obviously there's other technical specs to it other than bits, but at the time we were pretty much taught and educated by the video game companies at the time that bits were what mattered. And with 32-bit, I expected a bit more. Now, upon playing the game, you'll pick who you want to pick if you want to pick Sonic, and you'll be in a very familiar territory. It's Neo Green Hill Zone, and you'll soon notice that a lot of these zones kind of share a lot of similarities with past zones that we've seen in previous games, but the gameplay is very similar to that of the Genesis Classic series. I mean, the physics are all there. I mean, you're playing as Sonic and he feels pretty much like he does on the Genesis. Maybe a hair different. Feels a little bit different. But it plays very, very similar. The Genesis, of course, plays a little bit tighter. But you'll also notice that Sonic has moves as well, and so does the rest of the crew. You'll see that Sonic has a sliding kick of sorts. He has a backflip. He has the ability now to grind on rails, which is something very much akin to Sonic Adventure 2. No doubt that's where it was lifted from. And we have this jump dash maneuver, which I am afraid I have not really seen too many people talk about this here on YouTube. And I actually had to do a Google search for this because I thought maybe it was just me. But this air dash, it barely works. I'm sorry, but it doesn't. The jump dash, it barely works. Sometimes it works, sometimes I could pull it off, and then other times it stops working. And the way you get this to work is when you're in mid-air, you press the direction you're going in twice, and that is supposed to, get you to jump dash. But Sonic doesn't seem to want to do that. And I was kind of like wondering, well, is there a limit to how many times you could do it per zone? Or, do you have to have a certain amount of rings after a certain amount of time? And I'm like, no. I don't know. I don't know what I'm missing here. I've looked at the instruction manual online. If there's something I'm missing, then please let somebody tell me in the comments what I'm doing wrong here. But as far as I'm concerned, this move is pretty much broken. And you'll notice that the way you activate these moves is by hitting the B button, and they're pretty much optional. You could play through the entire game with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles and not once press the B button. Yeah, I'm being serious. You could just pretty much press the directional pad and the A button and you'll be just fine. I mean, you don't need these additional moves. With the only exception being is if you play as Amy, and we'll be getting to that in a moment. But I'll tell you about some of them. So you've got Tails. He can swing his tails around if you press the B button, and Knuckles can do punches, which is pretty cool. So let's talk about all these different play styles. You pretty much know what to expect with Sonic. It's going to be his gameplay style that you know and love from all the Genesis titles. Of course, with the added moves in it, Tails plays very much like he did back in Sonic 3, where you can use his flying abilities, and it feels really good. I mean, to fly as Tails, I mean, it just feels awesome. It feels just as good as it did back in Sonic 3, and I'm really happy to say that. Also, he could really make a joke out of a lot of bosses with his tails, especially in the Ice Mountain zone. He can just tear through Eggman's machine with his tails, no problem. When with Sonic, it's like a real issue to me, but with Tails, you could just rip right through them. And it makes it also easier to reach higher peaks, also to reach the special stages as well, which we'll talk about them in just a moment. But yeah, it makes it easier to reach them if you use Tails. Now Knuckles, he's got his gliding abilities, and this really interesting mechanic where you can swim on top of the water for a few seconds, but then you're gonna like plunge underneath it soon after, and you could kind of do a little bit of a swim if you try to glide underwater. So they kind of replaced that from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which is a little bit different. It's interesting to say the least. No alternate path though for Knuckles. You know, you're not going to get the Sonic 3 and Knuckles treatment here, which is very disappointing because all of them pretty much travel the same path with that in mind. Everybody is going to end up fighting against the same final boss. You know, everyone is going to travel to the same zones. Everyone's going to fight the same exact bosses, fight the same enemies along the way. So it's kind of disappointing in a way that everyone kind of follows the same path and it's very predictable. But then again, this is a handheld game, so I guess we can't be that picky. And last but not least, perhaps least for a few people, I would say, I think many people, is Amy Rose. And she is the only character in this game that can't spin dash, and her physics are a lot different. She is definitely the slowest of the bunch, has the slowest pickup speed, and this could be a real problem in a lot of different zones. You know, she can definitely jump higher thanks to her hammer jump, and she could also, though, to her ability, I haven't really heard a lot of people say this, she can really make a big joke out of a lot of bosses. Once again, the Ice Mountain boss, she can make a complete joke out of him. But also, the X-Zone boss is a total joke if you use her whirling attack. The whirling attack can really just destroy bosses. You could just cheese them. So even though Amy is sort of the hard mode of Sonic Advance, when it comes to bosses, she really makes quick work out of quite a few of them, especially some of the more tougher ones. But despite how tough she could be bringing through a lot of these zones, I did really like using the hammer jump and using the whirling attack, and I really get a kick out of her diving head attack, this like diving like headbutt move. It also looks hilarious because when she does it, she does a face plant. I find this character to be really endearing, And I remember having a really terrible time playing as Amy. I remember really hating playing as her, but now, you know, that I'm older and I enjoy more of a challenge, and she has some really unique abilities. So this is a real fun character to bring through the game with you. So yeah, unpopular opinion, guys. I actually like Amy in this game. I think she's quite fun to use, actually. Now, I do want to run through the zones with you guys and let you know what I think of each of them. So we've got the Neo Green Hill Zone, which of course, you know, going by the name, we know what this one is. This is your classic first level. We've had tons and tons of iterations and remakes of Green Hill Zone, but at this time, we didn't really get it as much, so it definitely felt more fresh in our minds. But there are differences. It is a fun level, and it definitely looks good. It's pleasing to the eye. So I don't really have any big complaints about this one. It's definitely a good way to start off Sonic Advance, your first handheld. It looks visually impressive, and you get to rail grind and all that. So of course, you know, that's all good. And you've got the classic loops. There's homages to Emerald Hill here, as well as, of course, as Green Hill, as you could imagine. Secret Base is next up, and this one definitely shares some similarities with Metropolis Zone from Sonic 2, though not quite like an entirely new concept. You know, there's no like nuts and bolts to run along. There's nothing really like that. There's no crushers, so there's that going for it. I do like the Act 1 music. It makes you feel like you're a secret agent. You know, of course, secret base, secret agent. You know, you definitely kind of feel like you're sneaking into a secret base of some sort. Casino Paradise Zone. This one right here, you know, come on. This is Casino Night Zone from Sonic 2. And a little bit of Carnival Night from Sonic 3 thrown in there, you know, of course, with the Badniks. This one has different gimmicks to it, some of the same things that you may imagine, like the pinball bumpers are there. But it's all fun, you know, and it does have a different aesthetic look to it overall. You know, definitely shares a lot with Casino Night, without a doubt. But yeah, it's definitely, you know, this was something new for the handheld. We hadn't had a casino level in any of the Game Gear Sonic games, so that was nice to see that put in here. Ice Mountain shares a lot of similarities with Ice Cap, except this one takes place underwater quite a bit, and Sonic really has the toughest time here. It's easier to avoid the water as Tails and Knuckles, because they can just fly and glide over it and find those alternate paths. And luckily, Tails has his swimming ability from Sonic 3, which is just great. Eggman can be quite a pain in the ass at the end here. He's definitely easier with Tails, as I mentioned before, and Amy. They could just smash this guy up with no problem. But Sonic and Knuckles, oh man, they're gonna have quite the tough time here, because getting to the top to hit him and also managing your air could be kind of tough. Now you have these icicles falling down from the ceiling, and if you somehow mistime it, because of course you're slower underwater, you'll end up drowning. And this happened to me quite a bit. It took me some time to get a hang of this and time it just right so I could finally beat Eggman and move on. Angel Island Zone. Now this one, I do like this perspective. It's not like Angel Island from Sonic 3. Angel Island is the temple part, and it's kind of cool that you get to explore this part of Angel Island. It's definitely not the most exciting visually, but you know, I do like it, and I like the idea of being on Angel Island and kind of exploring. This definitely has a Sandopolis feel. I mean, let's be quite honest. It's not identical, but we know that this is what this is supposed to be. And the boss might be a bit of a surprise to you, because it's the only boss that's not Eggman. It's actually Mecha Knuckles, and what's a pretty nice nod to the Archie comics and Mecha Madness. That was a really great little arc in the Archie comics, and if you've never checked it out, you should. But here we've got a fight that's pretty similar to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and I like that they threw this in here. This is a nice way of switching things up. Egg Rocket, man, the music in this zone just, oh man, super catchy stuff. This is definitely not the best soundtrack for a Sonic game. I mean, hell, it's not even the best handheld Sonic soundtrack there is. But Egg Rocket is just a really fun and complicated zone. I mean, playing through this again, I remember I was saying to myself, isn't there something about this zone that like gave me a tough time during my first playthrough? And that's right, it's a labyrinth. It's confusing, and it's not the way you would think that it is. I mean, it's like a vertical labyrinth. You're supposed to be climbing up through this ship, and as you're going through it, it's breaking apart. And you'll notice that instead of the typical Sonic countdown, which is usually counts up, you know, and before you get a time over, here it's actually counting down. You have to make your way to the individual different parts of the rocket before you die. And it can be kind of challenging, and there's a lot of misleading parts to it. There's a lot of speed boosters around that will send you off in the opposite direction than when you're really supposed to go, and it can be annoying your first time through, but upon playing this again, especially with the other characters, I gained an appreciation for it. It's a really fun, unique take on a level like this. And of course, you know, it does kind of bring back memories of Wing Fortress Zone from Sonic 2, though not quite, and a little bit of Flying Battery in there. You know, it's sort of like a hybrid level of those. Kind of reminds me a bit more of, you know, Sonic 2, especially during the last phase when the Egg Rocket finally makes it into space. Cosmic Angel Act 2, you know, it's kind of weird they did this because it's called Egg Rocket Act 1, but then there's Cosmic Angel Act 2. So that's a little bit strange, to say the least. It's a sequel to Egg Rocket, but they ended up giving Act 2 a different name for some weird reason. This is Death Egg Zone from Sonic and Knuckles, without a doubt. It's not as good. They do the anti-gravity gimmick, which they do a little bit of at the end of Egg Rocket, so that's kind of cool. It's a pretty quick act, without a doubt, but you know, it's a lot of fun. And the boss, you know, is really weird. This is like kind of one of the oddest bosses that I remember seeing, where you have to jump on the chain. I kind of forgot here, like, how to do this in a way, because it's not really noticeable, because the chain doesn't really jiggle that much at times when you jump on, and that's supposed to flip Eggman's craft around, enabling you to hit his vulnerable spot. The X Zone. This zone, really, the boss, I remember thinking that the boss here was, like, really difficult. You do get 2 callbacks here, which is the first boss from Sonic 1 and the first boss from Sonic 2. So that's really interesting that Eggman's brought back 2 of his previous machines. They both take 4 hits apiece, and they're both done. And this is very reminiscent of Mecha Sonic in Sky Sanctuary Zone back in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, where he also brought out the chain and ball from Sonic 1, and also brought out the Metropolis Zone gimmick. So this is a nice little callback that new players might not catch. And if you're playing it as Tails, the first boss is a complete and utter joke, because you could just hit him with your tails and he's going to be toast in no time. But the final boss here, different phases, very few moments where he's vulnerable, and I remember like really having a hard time figuring out what to do. But once you know what to do and you wait for this hand to extend or for him to cross the battlefield, Eggman will be down and out before you know it. And this is, again, like I mentioned before, Amy can use her whirling attack and just get so many extra hits on him. Eggman just looks like a complete joke here. So Eggman's base starts exploding, and you start running just like in Sonic 2 or Sonic 3 and Knuckles for that matter. And I really like this animation at the end where you're plummeting off the station and Tails swoops in to save you. It's like a really smooth animation. Here on the plane, this looks a lot smoother than it did in Sonic 3, to be quite honest. So I really like the way how this looks, and of course we get that classic scene of Sonic jumping at the camera that we've all grown very familiar and fond of. So, you might be asking yourself, isn't there one Sonic MacGuffin that I haven't talked about? Something that's really crucial to the series? Something that's pretty iconic, something pretty legendary that's been in pretty much all the games? Well, the time has come. So, the game ends, and, just like in previous games, Eggman taunts you, telling you to collect all the Chaos Emeralds. Well, guess what I say when I see this screen? No? No, fuck no, I'm not doing that. Because getting the Chaos Emeralds in this game is a chore, to say the least. So, first of all, you have to find the entrance to the special stages, which are these springs that will send you off into the cosmos, and they will bring you to this like top-down pseudo 3D special stage. And this, without doubt, is like one of the worst special stage designs I've ever seen. I mean, really, the depth perception is like totally off here. Collecting rings is just almost impossible. I mean, I never could do this. I remember trying so many times in Neo Green Hill Zone and just failing each and every time. And I tried again a little bit here, and I'm like, you know what? No, fuck it. We're not doing that. I don't need to see the true final boss. Trust me, I'm good. I'm Gucci. I don't need to see it because it's not worth the hassle. And having to do it 7 times, that's a real bother, to say the least. So, no thank you. I don't want to do it. And, no, I'm not doing it for the purposes of review. Sorry, guys, just not worth it. I don't have that type of time on my hands where I'm going to burn through all that time just doing this and just getting a real lousy reward at the end. I know it's an extra boss, but, man, you got to try out these special stages for yourself. They're a total fucking nightmare. Plus, if you're gonna make me go through all this bullshit with these special stages, you could at least let me play a Supersonic and the regular zones, but no, you could only do it in the true final boss battle. So, there's definitely not enough incentive here to get all the Chaos Emeralds. But overall, I have to say, I had a lot of fun going back with Sonic Advance. Good graphics, they would end up looking better in the future advanced titles. Good looking environments, fun gameplay that was very true to the Genesis titles and also building off of them a little bit. Good, if not derivative zones, but all of them are fun and do, introduce new things on top of those pre-existing designs. I feel like it didn't really get that much flack here back when it was first released like Sonic 4 did, and that's probably because, number one, there was more of them, and number two, they're just designed better than they are in Sonic 4, and I don't have any bones about it. I mean, this is definitely a better game than Sonic 4. It's more enjoyable, and I do like the art direction better. And I think a lot of people would agree. Does anyone disagree with that? Let me know in the comments below. And in retrospect, I really do enjoy how this game basically bridged the classic genre with the adventure genre, before those were even actual genres in the Sonic series. But one of Sonic Advance's greatest strengths, despite it being a bit derivative of the Genesis classics, is the fact that it takes those games and builds upon them, adds new elements, and then you get also small little touches like the individual animations for characters after finishing an act. Like, I really like, Sonic's peace sign pose, and you also have Amy who's waving at you, and Knuckles does this stoic fist in the air. Just absolutely glorious. These are some of my favorite victory animations in probably the entire Sonic series. I mean, I really just like how unique it is and how the characters keep running as they're doing it. It just really adds something that really can't be put into words. It's just something that looks so good. It's just so well animated, and it is just undeniable charm, I think, is the best way to put it. Anyway, guys, let me know what you all thought about the retrospective, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bells to get all notifications when I post all my new videos. I want to thank all my patrons for your continued support. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.